Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining our webinar today, which is on transforming your delivery of apps on managed secure Windows 11 IoT Thin Clients with Liquidware FlexDirect Workspaces and Tenzig. I'm Kevin Greenway, your host for today, and I'm very pleased to be welcoming today Matt Boyajian from Liquidware Labs. Hey Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Yourself, Kevin?
Yes, all good, thanks. All good. Excited for today's content?
Yes, very much so. I've been waiting 10 years for this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, can't wait. So in a moment we'll kick off with just some introductions to myself and Matt. But just before we do that, I just want to start with some housekeeping just to cover today's webinar. So the session is being recorded, which is good news. So all of the content that we'll be covering, including Matt's awesome demo, will be sent out to the attendees afterwards. And additionally, there is opportunity to ask questions throughout the webinar through your chat panel in the GoToWebinar control panel. So hopefully you should see that in that control panel, sort of towards the bottom in the chat area. So we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, where I gather any of those questions that have been asked, and I will be monitoring those in particular during Matt's demo, and I will, where there's an opportunity, sort of fire any of those questions at Matt to make that demo more interactive. So yeah, thanks again everybody for joining today. Hopefully you really get some good takeaways from the content that we're going to cover. Some awesome news coming again from FlexDirect Workspaces and Profile Unity. So with that, let's go through some introductions, and I'll start myself. So again, I'm Kevin Greenway. I'm the CTO of Tenzig, and I've worked in IT for close to 30 years. I come from a Microsoft and Cisco background, and I specialize in remoting real-time protocols from sort of early legacy IBM platforms, spent some time in VoIP, voice over IP, and computer telephony integration, to more recently to VDI with my time at Tenzig. So specifically at Tenzig, I've worked with Tenzig for now 12 years. I joined in 2012, and we as a company have been on really quite the journey, which is partly why I'm here to talk to you about that story and how we present ourselves today as an organization and working with organizations such as Liquidware and Matt. So that's me. Welcome again to you, Matt. And if you could just offer up a quick introduction to yourself, thank you, that'd be great.
Of course, Kevin. So my name is Matt Boyajian, Senior Solutions Architect with Liquidware. I have been with the company for now coming up on 15 years. I have been in the IT industry for 30 years before I was with Liquidware. I spent about 14 years with the largest utility provider in the Northeast United States, pioneered some of the first VDI systems, designed the first virtual controls of the US power grid, and have all kinds of other fun projects under my belt. And now working with Liquidware, I get exposed to thousands of different organizations and help them meet the challenges that they face in physical, virtual, and cloud environments.
Awesome, thanks for that. So we're both 30-year veterans, eh? Would never have thought that.
The pictures are old pictures, you know.
Yeah, both aged about 20 years since those pictures, pre-COVID. Great. So just starting off with Tenzig introduction, and do you want to acknowledge that there is a lot of healthy competition here in the industry that Tenzig work, and it's, you know, for sure one of the most commonly asked questions that we're asked in terms of how we different from our competitors. So some of those things I'm here to cover today. So we are a solely focused thin and zero client vendor, unlike some of our competitors who offer sort of everything under the sun. The other thing that makes us different is that we offer both hardware and software under one roof. So that includes the thin clients and of course the operating system that goes alongside that. And whilst we do prioritize our in-house R&D efforts on our own Linux OS, we also offer Windows 11 IoT LTSC, which makes a big talking point of today's webinar, and we're able to qualify and position end users into either option depending on what their needs look like. So for instance, our Linux OS tends to be the go-to for any customer who might exclusively be using VDI, such as a platform like Omnis Horizon or Citrix. And then another option might be that they might require the Thin Client OS for some sort of web browse use case, but then Windows 11 IoT LTSC can be used for the same and more. So for instance, like today's session, where we can use Windows 11 IoT to deliver native Windows apps through, again, solutions like FlexApp, as again, Matt will be covering. All of our endpoints are managed via our endpoint management software in Tenzig Manager. And Tenzig, because of the fact that we are solely focused, are often ahead of the development curve, both in terms of our hardware and software offerings. And our staff, again, being solely focused, provide industry-leading support to our mutual customers. And what extends on our support is the ability of knowing and understanding the connecting products, again, like we're seeing today from Liquidware, which extend way beyond just looking after that physical endpoint from either a hardware or an operating system perspective. Compared to our competitors, we also have a really simple licensing and subscription model where, for example, the OS management and support is all inclusive of the endpoint purchase. So you're not having to wrap in different subscriptions on top of the endpoints. And last but not least, our production is based in the US and the UK. And unlike my accent, I am based out of our headquarters today, here in sunny but not so warm Phoenix, Arizona. And again, in both operations between US and UK, we handle everything, including our warehouse, sales and support teams. So with that, I'll just hand over to yourself, Matt. Just give me a second and I'll let you go through an introduction for Liquidware.
That sounds great. So still don't have presenter yet, working on it, and there we go.
There you go.
So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about the Liquidware corporate overview. So first of all, who is Liquidware? Well, we've been around since 2009. Most of our products have been around since the year 2001, and we're currently present in 72 of the top Fortune 100 companies across the globe. So that gives us a massive space in the Fortune 1000 customer space, the education space, the healthcare space, and of course, the United States federal government space. There's a number of other three-letter organizations that we're a part of that I cannot mention on this call, but rest assured, because of our healthy footprint inside of the United States federal government, that means that we take security very, very seriously. Pen testing for all of our products is done on a constant, ongoing basis. In terms of what we do a lot. We do assessments and design. So if you're looking to design your next generation environment, be that VDI, cloud, or if what we're talking about today really resonates with you, we can talk about designing something like FlexDesk for your environment. Then the majority of what we're going to be talking about is migration, migrating into a new platform, migrating into a new type of platform, and how we can use our tools to do that. And then on top of that, once we've got the entire platform deployed, how do you make sure the wheels stay on the bus? Well, we have tools that help you validate, manage operations, troubleshoot, and optimize the environment as well. Now, to do that, we have a series of tools. We have something called Command Control. This is our SaaS-based real-time remediation software. Think of this as a one-to-one relationship between you and your users and their systems. There's DVR built in, there's AI built in, and you can really think of this like Task Manager on steroids with automated troubleshooting telling you what's right and wrong about every environment, including what we're going to talk about today, which is FlexDesk. Now, on top of that, we also have something called Stratosphere UX. This is our wide-scale user experience monitoring and management tool. It's a learning appliance, so it's going to learn about your environment, all your users, and what they're used to for experience. It's going to create a thumbprint of your organization and tell you what's going to go wrong with your environment before it actually does. Now, the core of our presentation today is really the culmination of three separate things. It's a 10-zig piece of hardware, and then it's a combination of Profile Unity and FlexApp. So Profile Unity is our profile management solution. So I want to be able to instantly and seamlessly take a piece of 10-zig hardware and stack your profile on it regardless of its size. So if I have 20, 40, 60 gigs worth of data, if I have massive amounts of registry keys and all kinds of things that I need customized, like shortcuts and printers and registry keys, Profile Unity does all of that for me, and it automates a lot of things for the user. However, we can't really suggest having a thin client replace your PC unless I can make applications available on it. And we're going to show you some really cool tricks on how we do that, but the core of it is what we call FlexApp. FlexApp is known as application layering, where the ability to seamlessly take an application and link it to your operating system. So I can do this with, in many cases, dozens or hundreds of applications. We're going to load up a 10-zig client pretty hard today and show you what happens when we really push that envelope. And this method applies to not just desktop-based thin clients, but also the ultra-mobile thin clients that 10-zig offers. So whether you're in the field, whether you are a road warrior, whether you are tied to a desk the way a lot of us are nowadays, none of that matters. We have a solution that's going to work exceptionally well for you, and it's going to replace your expensive VDI, cloud, and physical machines with a much more cost-effective 10-zig and Liquidware solution. And that's all I have for this portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin.
Thanks for that, Matt. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
All right, so with that, Matt's obviously introduced some of those concepts on his slides, but this is really just to emphasize that partnership between 10-zig and Liquidware and enforcing that long-standing partnership that we have. And I think, as it's probably obvious, historically we have worked together jointly on VDI projects, including, you know, the traditional kind of Citrix, VMware, Microsoft solutions. And sort of prior and during the COVID remote working era, we integrated Stratosphere into both our Linux and Windows-based clients for providing that monitoring of the physical endpoint, as well as the command control solution that Matt had mentioned for our Windows-based endpoints. And again, really today's presentation is then focusing on specifically delivering profiles through Profile Unity, as well as delivering apps to our Windows 11 based IoT clients for FlexApp. Now, again, as mentioned, a key differentiator for 10-zig is our single vendor strategy. And that's made up of the fact that we offer both our own hardware, with more information on that to follow in a subsequent slide, as well as our firmware and OS offerings being finely tuned to operate on our own hardware. And this is offered up, again, both in Linux and Windows IoT versions, and also our PC repurposing software, which is based on the same Linux platform, which runs on our own hardware, but has been expanded to support x86-based PCs, laptops, and third-party thin clients. All of this is then kind of wrapped together in an envelope of being managed through 10-zig Manager. And 10-zig Manager is our endpoint-free and inclusive management tool, which again, I have a slide on later. Now, again, I'm not going to steal the thunder today because it's about the demo of FlexApp and Profile Unity, but as Matt's already touched on, you know, from the 10-zig perspective, we have, you know, a bunch of different range of hardware available. All of our hardware is based on Intel and AMD to ultimately offer the greatest flexibility for modernized thin and zero clients. As you can see here on the right, they're made up of both traditional desktop form factor models, and all of those models sort of range from supporting a minimum of 2 monitors up to 4 monitors, including 4K 60 Hz support, as well as various different USB outputs, both that are available on the front and rear of those models. And then in addition to the desktop form factor models, we also offer an all-in-one based model, which is a 24-inch monitor that's kind of used in most predominantly education and healthcare settings. And what stands the all-in-one out is the fact that it also includes an integrated webcam, as you can see, which again is very popular in the current working state for platforms like Microsoft Teams and Zoom. And also after the pandemic, and again with the flexible working, We also introduced a thin client-based laptop, which you can see here on the left, and this includes the ability of supporting things like port replicators, so employees can enjoy flexible working, whether they're at home or office, for attaching different types of monitors and USB port expansion. And this particular laptop is powered by the Intel N100 processor, which offers really great support for all of the remote decoding capabilities that we have from the various different VDI solutions. And then last but not least is the repurpose OS. So again, that's used in a situation where you want to use our own operating system for existing hardware, or indeed even third-party thin clients where you're essentially using repurpose to bring that operating system and management into the same entire ecosystem, regardless of or not whether you use Tenzig hardware. So everything under the sun there. Just touching on the software elements of Tenzig, specifically our operating systems, and it's important to cover briefly the fact that during 2020 we introduced our all-new 64-bit Linux operating system, which kind of comprises of these three different platforms, which I'll just take a moment just to briefly summarize. So Tenzig NOS here is our zero client, which operates across all of our hardware, and Tenzig NOS comes in three different flavors to support one singular VDI or DaaS-based solution via essentially a finely tuned firmware for supporting either NOS-V, which is there to support VMware, now Omnissa. We also have the NOS-C version, which supports Citrix, and last but not least is NOS-M, which is designed to support Microsoft products, including AVD, Windows 365, and RDS. Then on the right-hand side here is PeakOS, which is our Linux OS, which supports all common VDI and DaaS platforms, as well as various web browsers simultaneously. And it can operate using a traditional desktop-based OS with a sidebar taskbar, as well as other modalities such as the NOS modality to give the users the same look and feel if they were combining these different platforms together, so that again, a user of PeakOS could use the same secure login portal, connect to, for instance, Citrix or Omnissa or AVD or Windows 365. Repurpose is then identical to PeakOS, but it includes then, again, it's expanded to support the third-party hardware such as PCs, laptops, and third-party thin clients. And last but not least, which is really today's topic, is our Windows 10 and 11 IoT LTSC offering. So Tenzig, as well as leading on Linux, we've always offered Windows IoT, and before it, Windows Embedded, to our customers to give ultimately that flexibility where, for instance, there's a need to run native Windows apps, whether they are deployed physically locally onto Windows IoT or as a application layering technology like we're discussing today. So it is worth just a slide to call out some of the features of 11 IoT, again, based on the fact that it is very much linked and topical to today's content, and really just to call out one of the main things and differentiators how it does differ versus its professional and enterprise versions. So Tenzig launched 11 IoT LTSC Enterprise 2024 back in the summer, and again, some of the main call-outs for it that differentiate it from the traditional professional and enterprise version. Firstly, IoT LTSC Enterprise doesn't mandatorily require TPM2 chips. So whilst the Tenzig hardware has the option of supporting TPM 2.0 chips, and where they're present, Windows IoT LTSC Enterprise will leverage that TPM for secure boot signing. It isn't enforced, so it can operate on hardware without the presence of TPM 2.0, which is ultimately there to save organizations money. The pricing is also more competitive. So unlike professional and enterprise, it's based on a silicon placemat. And the benefit of that for thin clients is that specifically all of Tenzig's models sit into the entry segment pricing SKU. So again, the pricing is very competitive against the enterprise and professional versions. And the LTSC version, which is always favored by Tenzig, is there to offer a longer support life cycle. So with the LTSC version, you get 5 years of mainstream support from this year onwards, and it also offers up to 10 years extended support, which makes it really good for longevity and good for longevity of support as well. Critically, it features a significantly smaller footprint than its professional and enterprise versions. And what Tenzig do as a vendor is we fine-tune that image so that we fine-tune it specifically for remote application and VDI delivery. So it's much more sort of polished and finely tuned than, again, its enterprise and professional counterparts, which are much more bloaty in comparison. And it is also supportive of some awesome security and management capabilities, such as Shell Launcher. So Shell Launcher can be used for launching native UWP apps in a protected shell. So essentially, you're protecting the user, you're restricting the user from accessing the traditional local Windows Explorer shell. And also neat features like the multi-app kiosk, where you can provide users with a secure and restricted kiosk view if, for example, you wanted to give them access to just, let's say, for example, a Citrix connection as well as an enterprise browser connection, but restrict any other access to the OS shell. The registry and disk can be protected using unified write filter, and importantly, the OS can be managed via Intune as well. And on top of that, Tenzig offer custom plugins for Windows 11 IoT LTSC Enterprise. So some of those features I've talked about, Tenzig develop plugins that sit on top of that to enable easy configuration and easy management of those features through UIs, both locally and through Tenzig Manager. And we do cover various educational videos through the Tenzig YouTube channel, which I've linked up here. So things like multi-app kiosk, you'll see a recent video that my colleague Jason has created on that, which again, help and aid customers who are deploying 11 IoT LTSC Enterprise into organizations and can benefit from those cool features. Just wrapping up before I hand over to Matt. So again, I've mentioned this a couple of times. Tenzig Manager is free and uncomplicated. So it's included free with every physical Tenzig endpoint, as well as the repurposed software solution. Now, this version currently is a Windows-based version, but next year we do expect to release an all-new Linux-based version, which will support. It will be based upon a Linux virtual appliance, and it will include new features like, for instance, support of Entra for user authentication. And some of the major feature callouts of Tenzig Manager include secure remote management through our secure connector. So you can manage, enforce secure remote management of both our Windows and Linux-based thin clients, and we can provide automated configuration of, again, Windows and Linux-based clients. And so, for example, with, again, today's topic on Profile Unity and FlexApp, we can use the Tenzig Package Manager to be able to deploy both Profile Unity and FlexApp containers to those Windows 11 IoT endpoints to, again, provision app stacks, etc. Also, you can shadow all endpoints and do all of the the typical management capability features that you would expect to see through Tenzig Manager. Now, again, not going to steal any of Matt's thunder on the demo here, but what Matt will cover in the demo is Profile Unity and FlexApp, and we have put together two topical contents on our YouTube channel which show the deployment of Profile Unity via Tenzig Manager, as well as deploying FlexApp packages through Tenzig Manager. So again, both of those features that Matt will cover, we have got guides already available on our YouTube channel, which you can use later to reference those. So again, this recording will be shared where you can either take the QR codes now or later after the recording. So with that, I'll hand to you, Matt. I'm really excited to see this awesome demo.
All right, outstanding.
So you should have presenter access now.
There we are. All right. So hello again, ladies and gentlemen. This time we're going to be taking a really deep dive into what we call FlexDirect Workspaces, full Windows apps and profiles on thin clients with Windows IoT. And Kevin, thank you so much for setting this up, because you mentioned a lot of really key points as to why this partnership has been so successful, which is all the things that you guys are doing on the back end in terms of optimizing the image and giving us good hardware and enabling new functionality within the operating system, like that right filter, is going to give us some things that we never really thought possible. Which is, and just to set the table on here, I know a lot of people who are attending this meeting right now are either utilizing VDI or utilizing cloud PCs, and 9 times out of 10, sticker shock comes into play quite a bit. So, and then on top of that, we also see organizations are saying, well, I want to leverage non-persistent VDI because it's more secure, it's faster, I can have a device that I can turn over to anybody at any time. Well, with a 10-zig IoT device, you're getting all those things. You're getting, in most cases, better hardware that you can usually deliver through VDI or cloud. You are getting non-persistence, and we're going to show you how all that stuff works as we come up on the demo. Before that, though, we need to understand the underpinnings of everything that we're discussing here, because really this is a culmination of 3 separate things working together. The 10-zig hardware with Windows IoT combined with Profile Unity and FlexApp. So first off, when it comes to Profile Unity and FlexApp, this is not an all or nothing endeavor. This is something that can be used on physical, virtual, cloud environments, or we can do this in the FlexDirect method that we mentioned before. So you have 4 different platforms that you can utilize. And this is important because this may not be for somebody like a CAD engineer or one of your ultra devs who needs 16 cores. But for the majority of your user base, when I have something like a quad core 8-thread workstation with upwards of 2 to 4 monitor outputs and tons of USBs, well, that sounds like a mid-range laptop or desktop, doesn't it? And that's exactly what 10-zig's offering you. So when you put our software on top of it, that is exactly what you're getting. You're getting user environment management, application portability, real-time remediation, as well as a DEX or digital experience monitoring solution. Now, what is this ideal for? And the answer is around 80% of your employees are going to be an excellent fit for FlexDirect Workspace. Why? Well, as I just mentioned, the majority of your users are not going to be developers or high-end engineers, so a mid-range system is exactly what they need, and that is what 10-zig is offering. Now, this isn't just in terms of a full component desktop connected to a monitor or all-in-one solution. Don't forget, we also have those ultra portable units. And that's important because there are a couple of different ways that we can deploy FlexApp. And as we get down into the technology, remember that this is not just something for someone in an office or somebody working from home. This is also something that's going to work exceptionally well if I am a road warrior. So how do we go about doing this? Well, first, we need to be capable in physical endpoint, which 10-zig has given us, but we recognize that in some cases we are going to be limited, especially in terms of storage. So if we only have 256 or 128 gigs of storage, that's okay. We're going to show you how our software can do a lot more with less. And again, most of their systems have around 8 gigs of RAM, which is fine for a mid-range system, but when we throw in the efficiencies of the 10-zig IoT OS, where they're ripping out things that you might necessarily don't want, like, for example, Copilot and 3D Paint and all the other crazy stuff that Microsoft builds into an image nowadays, suddenly the image becomes thin and light and very, very responsive. And I now have my choice of how I want to deploy things. Do you want to use Intune to deploy applications with FlexApp? Fine, you can have that. Do you want to do that through a Profile Unity interface instead? You can have that as well. Do you want to use the 10-zig manager to deploy applications? You can do that too. So if you're looking to get away from being burdened by Active Directory or other third-party tools that you're paying money for, this is a great way to do it. Now, in terms of cost, because ultimately that's what's going to move the needle here in terms of telling your management why we need to move to a technology like this, my marketing team has given me a basic overhead cost of doing something like VDI versus FlexDirect. And the cost savings are massive, in the millions plus. Why? Well, we already have to buy a thin client for VDI. We already have to buy a thin client for cloud. why wouldn't we just replace cloud and VDI with said thin client? All of a sudden, the costs of servers and storage and load balancers and all this other stuff simply goes away. And they have been exceptionally conservative on these numbers. So if you run your own calculations, you will find massive amounts of savings moving to this different model. So it's faster than VDI, faster than cloud, more secure and more safe than a physical desktop and laptop, especially when we do something like an enhanced write filter, because we have a stateless device. We have something that once the user logs off, there's nothing on it. There is nothing there. You can give it to anybody and there's nothing you can go and pull off the machine because there is nothing physically on it. Now, so where the best use cases for this are is enterprise exploring a complement or option to VDI or DaaS. If you're looking to cut down in your laptop and desktop costs, if you're looking to cut down on anything that has been essentially hamstringing you during these financially difficult times. So how does all this work? Because a lot of this sounds like a bit of a magic trick, doesn't it? Well, what we're doing here is first the applications. The applications are linked to the 10-zig hardware. And the way that we do that is through a combination of a container, in this case, the VHDX, and a filter driver, which is the way to take those containers and link them to the operating system for things like device drivers and files and directories and services and all that other fun stuff. But what if I have an ultra mobile system? I don't want to just link a VHDX container or a VMDK container or any other container from the network to a system. No, instead what I want to do is I want to condense the agent, the filter driver, and the container to a single self-extracting exe. So this one method can be used for both desktop-based IoT devices as well as ultra-mobile-based IoT devices. Well, what if you have something that's sort of in the middle, where I'm in the office most of the time, but sometimes I'm out in the field? That's okay. Either method will work for you, because classic FlexApp with the VHDX containers do have caching available. And I'm going to show you how that caching works during the demo. But on top of that, if we have FlexApp 1 with the EXE-based delivery, that can again work there as well. So it doesn't matter what your use case is. I'm on a train, plane, and automobile most of the time. I'm in the office most of the time. I split my time. None of those things matter. And because we're using containerization, that means a host of other benefits occur simply by utilizing FlexApp. So first off, we don't incur Windows rot. So as you normally install and uninstall applications, just by utilizing the operating system, what happens? Things get left behind. Old files, old directories, old services, and they make Windows unstable. Because we're containerized, we're pulling all that stuff out. We also have the ability to serve as a mediator between applications that don't get along. So if I have two apps that are fighting over two different versions of the same DLL, or I have two applications that are fighting over the same registry space, none of that matters. FlexApp will manage those conflicts for you automatically. Now, if I combine this with something like an IoT write filter, which 10-zig offers, now I get the best of all worlds, because again, I have that non-persistent experience on a physical piece of hardware, expanding the capabilities that we can normally get on a physical PC. So why should we use FlexApp? We have portable application layers. We can complement MSIX and MSIX App Attach. We have FlexApp built in, and we have the most third-party integration as well as the highest compatibility rate in the industry. So things like MSIX, AppV are currently in the 70 to 80% compatibility range. We're at the 97.6% compatibility range. Device drivers, system services, COM+, DCOM objects, none of these things matter to us. We work with all of them. So this is ideal for physical workstation app delivery. We are self-contained, highly compatible. We run as fast or faster than native. So this isn't like something like application virtualization, like the old school thin app days where an application runs slower simply because it's inside this little bubble. We're not doing that. Application layering makes your applications run faster, not slower. And of course, if you want to use different solutions to deploy this, like Microsoft Intune, a single line will help deploy as well as uninstall your applications. So you get simplified management, enhanced security, cost-efficient deployments, superior user experience, scalability, and flexibility all at the same time. Now, When we're moving to this method, the big question that I usually get asked is, how do I get there? What are the stepping stones to make this process easier? And what you first need to do is first capture your user profiles. And we do that through the Profile Unity engine. So I can go on your existing machines, take software, put it on your existing machines, and capture the things like your registry settings and your Chrome settings and things like your Outlook signatures and everything that makes you tick. And I can take your documents and make those available on the network. And then on top of that, I need to convert your applications. And this is, again, a big deal because anybody who's been down the Thin App, the App V, or the MSIX route knows that converting applications takes engineers, but not with FlexApp, because we have things like packaging automation, where I can let a series of machines go after your entire software repository and convert them to Flex apps for you. So now everything is converted for your users and everything is made very, very simple. Now, this is further enhanced by the fact that we don't care about your versions of Windows. So if you're in the midst of a Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration, like 80% of the world is right now, this process supersedes that. And you can move backwards and forwards between any versions of Windows that Microsoft has built in the last 10 years automatically. We combine this with a lot of automation features. So this is an example of the ProU console that can manage all these things. Anything that's in blue is a mainstay feature that we've had for 10 plus years. Anything that's green is going to be one of our new functions that's been available for the last 24 plus months. Now, what you're going to see here is a lot of things that you normally have to work through in either ADGPO or scripting. And we're giving you a much simpler interface where everything that you see here can be achieved in 5 clicks or less. So it doesn't matter if I'm deploying new drive maps for new users or sending out 5 or 6 printers to a group of people or anything like that. Anything you see here can be performed in 5 clicks or less.
But how exactly do we go about doing that? Because a lot of this sounds a little bit like a magic trick, doesn't it? Because we're really saying that we can go between any version of Windows that we want, between any profile that we want automatically. So the way that we do this is that we carve up the profile into around 38 different sections. And we basically say that most of these sections, read about 95%, are generic. We really don't care what operating system they go to. They will work properly. But around 5% of these areas are very, very specific. And in fact, if we take them and put them in a different operating system, it will essentially black screen or blue screen the OS. Just the exact same way that would happen if you took the profile and simply forklifted it from point A to point B. So we're using a combination of compression, CRC, and a combination of other things to make sure that the profile always works. But none of that works unless you have filters. And filters are a logic engine. Huge amounts of conditions that we can put together with multi-combinational and or logic sets. Is not, begins with, ends with, and then of course the ever important IoT is part of this in the newer version of Profile Unity. What's great about this is I can chain these rules together and create complex rule sets while pulling in what the client already has. So it doesn't matter if they've standardized on security groups or organizational units or subnets or anything else. We can leverage those things to say whatever the client has currently built, that's what I want to embrace, because I don't want to have them go through and recreate everything for the sake of having us or having FlexDirect or anything else. I want to embrace the things that they've already built over the last 15, 20 years. So even if we have some newer things that we want to add to that, like some complex logic sets and being able to say that I want you to be a member of the security group, but I also want you to be a member of this thin client name or this subnet or any subset of rules, we can do that. Now, finally, before the demo, I would like you guys to take a look at the QR code to try FlexApp 1 over a cup of coffee. It's very easy to do. Simply follow this QR code. It'll bring you to our FlexApp 1 page. You can download precompiled EXEs of FlexApps and try them on any system that you want, so long as the application's not already installed there. And by doing that, you will see exactly how easy it is to take these applications and make them natively portable, make them in such a way that it doesn't matter when or where they're being applied, they will simply just function exactly the way that they were meant to. Now, remember, if you have any questions about this, please contact us at sales@liquidware.com. If you'd like to see any further demos, you can visit us at liquidware.com. Now, without further ado, I'm going to log into my 10-zig thin client. This is a non-persistent thin client, so it's the first time it's ever seen me. And what we're going to walk through is what happens the first time I make that transition into the thin client? So I've already run the Profile Unity software against my physical desktop, physical laptop, cloud system, VDI system, and I've collected all that data, and now I type in my username, I hit enter, and everything just runs. So we see the Profile Unity splash screen just fired up, but wait a second. What's going on here? Well, this is still Windows 11, and it's still going to ask me weird questions like, what's my location? What do I want to do about inking and typing? And this does two things. Remember that in Profile Unity, we could turn this off. We can automate this for the user. But I do want to kind of lend credence here of, yes, this truly is the first time I'm logging into this Windows 11 IoT Thin Client. And yes, this is the first time that my data has been migrated over. So I click accept, and then I'm given the Liquidware and 10-zig background. And if you notice, there's a lot of customization going on here, which is pretty crazy for a system that I've logged into for the first time. So you can see I've got the cool background, and I've got my icons the way I like them, and for whatever reason my recycle bin's still full, which is insane considering I've never seen this system before. And on top of that, there's a lot of other moving parts made available from the migration from my physical virtual or cloud system into the FlexDesk environment, like my documents. I have gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs of documents. I'm a bit of a hoarder. Yes, I do have a problem. Some of this stuff has been with me for 10 plus years. And the important thing is I want to keep that data. It's my intellectual property. It's very important to me. It should be along for the ride. Now, on top of that, all the other little pieces of the operating system also need to be taken care of and taken account for, and the registry is a big part of that. So if I go into places like HKey current user, software, we're going to see huge amounts of customization, and what we're not going to see is any form of corruption. Because remember what we talked about earlier with that portability engine. I'm taking all that data, I'm putting multiple levels of corruption detection and CRC and MD5 and hashing and all that cool stuff, and making sure that even if I transfer between 6, 7, 8 different machines through the course of having this data, everything still works exactly the way it should. And that, of course, occurs for FlexDesk or anything else that we're doing here. But importantly, it also occurs for the Windows 10 to Windows 11 translation, or Server 2016, or Server 2019, or Server 2022. So when a Windows 11 by itself is a headache, migrating to it is even more so, because we all know that the Microsoft tools simply aren't up to snuff. But if we take this as part of our stepping stones as the Windows 11 migration, we can not only do it easier, we can do it cheaper, we can do it faster, and we can make sure that you have truly moved the needle when it comes to making all these systems work the way they're supposed to. But all we've done so far is talk about the profile, and that's really only half of the equation here, isn't it? The other real big piece of this is, how am I supposed to do more with less? And in this case, I only have about 128 gigs of free storage on my thin client. We've already seen that this is being redirected. So in the case of my profile, the OS is really taking up about 17 gigs worth of data. And we all know that my profile itself had gigs and gigs and gigs of data inside of it. So through redirection, we don't have to represent it. But what about the apps? What happens when I take huge amounts of Flex apps, hundreds of gigabytes of Flex apps, and bind them to the system? Well, the short answer is, if you do this without caching, it doesn't use any storage space at all, because everything is linked from these VMDKs and VHDXs and all these drives that are linked to my C drive through the filter driver, which is insane, because if I have, let's call it 250 gigabytes worth of applications, I can push those down instantly, no problem. But what if I want redundancy? What if I want to keep that data on the system? Well, we also have FlexApp caching. And the great part about that is the blocks that you use are pulled down. And what we found is you only need around 15 to 20% of the blocks inside of a package to make all these applications work. So of course, this is truly Windows 11 IoT. It is 24H2. We can see that it's all the latest and greatest stuff, and we're taking all these applications and essentially making them appear like magic. But it's not magic. It's simply application layering. And you can do this for a physical workstation that's plugged into the LAN and make it available with caching for the ultimate redundancy. Or if you like, what you can also do is utilize something like FlexApp One and put this on one of 10-zig's mobile thin clients and cache the whole thing down. Or you can do a combination thereof. So all the huge amount of applications that I have here are simply linked to the operating system natively. Windows doesn't know they're any different. The user doesn't know they're any different. Inside of program files and program files x86, they're simply just there. But what exactly is that? Where are these applications coming from? Well, in this case, they're coming from my network. They're coming from my UNC path. So here are all my Flex apps, and here are all the huge amount of applications that I have. And you can see it's not just your standard Google Chrome, FileZilla applications. I have a huge amount of massive applications that require a lot of space. So the Microsoft Office of the world, Visual Studio Code. You saw some other custom large-scale enterprise apps in there. And again, that's what this is meant for. We have a 97.6% compatibility rate. And the really important thing here is when you put all this stuff together, we're essentially providing you a system that is more than the sum of its parts, greater than the sum of its parts. We have a system that is, for all intents and purposes, just as powerful as your standard desktop system, but we have to make do with less storage and in some cases less memory. But with FlexApp, when we put all those things together, we do more with less. And we're able to say, hey, look, it doesn't matter if we have less storage than we'd really like for all these applications. It's simply going to work the way that it's supposed to. And FlexApp gives you a host of other benefits, aside from being able to treat this machine like persistent or non-persistent VDI for a fraction of the cost. What it also does for me is it prevents Windows rot because everything here is containerized. It goes and allows applications that would normally fight over two different versions of the same DLL to coexist. It says, even though I have two apps that are fighting over the registry, those are going to coexist just fine. Now, I have huge amounts of applications here. You can see I just ran through the Windows Start menu, but I'm not a huge fan of the Start menu. So let's see what this is actually like for the user to run. So I'm going to run through a huge host of applications and really just build this system up with a lot of apps and see how they perform. And if you notice, this list is not easy. If you've ever dealt with application virtualization before, like AppV or SVS or ThinApp or anything like that, you might notice that this list of apps is tricky because they have all kinds of weird things going on with them. They might have right-click context associations. They might have things like constant updates within the system. They might have COM plus or DCOM objects. They might have system services. And you can see that all these things are simply working the way that they're supposed to. I just fired off a right-click context menu, and all the things that are supposed to have context, as a result, go and have context. So let's fire off some apps, and let's see how these things go and work. So we're going to go and start with 7-Zip, and 7-Zip, as you can see, is nice and snappy, and again, it's got those context associations that we talked about, and we've also got Java, because everyone loves Java with its infinite versions, and again, with FlexApp, I don't care if you have multiple versions, they will coexist just fine, and in this case, I have FileZilla, which has endless amounts of updates that I need to account for, and GOMP Player, which does DirectX 12 audio video injection, and Google Chrome, which is going to just eat up all of my memory, especially when I point it to Liquidware.com and it goes and gives me all these really nice, really high-res HTML5 videos. So if you notice, what I'm doing here is I'm letting all this stuff run in the background. So I'm letting these apps consume all these space, even if I go and do things like firing up GreenShot and messing with that, or taking a look at Image Burn, which is a virtual device burner. Very cool things. It allows me to either burn or rip or do some crazy stuff with ISO files. And now I'm going to run through all my geek tools, the stuff that I use on a fairly regular basis. So we're going to do some WinSCP, and we're going to do some WinDirStat, and we'll do VLC, both skinned and unskinned, so we can have both copies running side by side. And I have TerraCopy, which is something that replaces the Windows copy handler. So now I'm replacing parts of the OS with FlexApp. And we can do PSFTP and Notepad++, and we're going to do PZip and Paint.net. And Paint.net is a big Photoshop open source replacement, so it's a fairly sizable application. And we'll do some media info, and we'll do some other stuff too. Now, if you've noticed, the sharp-eyed among you may have noticed that I kind of have been skipping around some of these applications. In particular, the ones in the center, I haven't really played with very much. So LibreOffice and OpenOffice, I've kind of left alone. Why is that? Why have I gone and done that? Well, in this case, I have two applications that don't necessarily get along. They have two different DLLs that conflict. So when I put them as Flex apps, I need to be able to make sure that I don't have that DLL conflict. What's great about this is that this is all automatic. So unlike AppV, SVS, ThinApp, MSI, MSIX, where I have to go and tell it, hey, look, these apps are going to be a problem, FlexApp does all this automatically through the filter driver. And this doesn't just occur for files either. It also occurs for registry keys. So if I have two applications that say, hey, I want my place in HKey local machine software, and another says, no, I want my place in HKey local machine software, just like with the files, we do the exact same thing with the registry. So in this case, I'm going to go fire these up, and I haven't run one of these before, which is OpenOffice. So I'm going to run through the initial setup wizard, and I'm going to click next, 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 and we're going to go see that OpenOffice just goes and fires it up. And I'm going to do the same thing with LibreOffice. And now these two are running side by side. Now, I mentioned that there's really nothing special that I have to go about doing here. So how exactly does this technology work? Well, as I mentioned before, FlexApp is a culmination of two things. We have a container, in this case a VHDX, and we have a filter driver, just like what Microsoft uses for Windows Defender and AppV and all that fun stuff. And all these EXEs look very, very similar, pretty out-of-the-box stock Windows stuff, until I get all the way down here, and I see the VirtFS service. So this is what's doing all the hard work behind the scenes to make sure that these apps aren't conflicting. So when I have that file conflict, I'm not virtualizing it because that would slow things down. We want FlexApp to be as fast or faster than native. What I want to be able to do is say, hey, can we swap that? Can I swap in this DLL on access from the application? And when you have a filter driver, that is exactly what you can do. And the exact same thing is occurring with the registry. So if I have a registry conflict, I can go and swap that in whenever it is that I happen to need it, and everything is going to work exactly the way it's supposed to. Now, this is going to occur regardless of the complexity of the apps, regardless of the size of the apps, regardless of the amount of the apps that you happen to have here, but we do need to make sure that we're following best practices. So when it comes to best practices, what should we do? So first off, all the runtimes that you need to function should be included in the base image. So we have compilers for compiled versions of this, so you can do this automatically, but your C++s and your .NETs and your J#, they should all be there and they should just function. And on top of that, what we want to be able to do is make sure that this included the base image so we maintain it over time. But how do we get here? How exactly do I get to the point of being able to collect all those user profiles the way I did before and collect all these applications and seamlessly migrate them into an environment? What are the stepping stones to do that? Well, we do all of that through what we call the Profile Unity console, which I am logging into right now. And the only thing I need to do to set all this up is basically spin up a Windows server, install the Profile Unity software onto it, and then what I have is I have a series of templates. And these templates are going to walk you through the entire process of either A, setting up a migration, or B, setting up a complete copy of FlexDirect, or both, because these things are designed to be interchangeable. And the whole point is I don't want to have to go through all the heavy amounts of work that we've gone through over the years to make all this stuff work. We've been doing this over 20 years. So I'd like to have all of the things that we've learned in that time built into the product and built into the templates. So when we go and create these things, everything is there for us. So what do I need to do? Well, easy. All I need to do is click on the template, whichever one I want. Do I want it via UNC? Do I want it in the cloud? Do I want it combined with a profile disk, which is a persistent disk that I can use to store my data? There's a fun set of options here. All of them are pretty easy because all I need to know is where would you like to store this information? And I'm going to give this a UNC path that says server share. And then it says, okay, how do I want to push the agent? I can use GPO, or better yet, I can use the 10-zig manager to go and do that. And then it says, well, where would you like me to put this agent? And I put it into the repository for the 10-zig manager, so it knows where the agent is, and that can go and deploy it. And that is a complete deployment. So now all I have to do is push this agent to my existing machines, and they will start capturing their profiles in that Profile Unity format. We can even move their data, like their documents in their desktop, and migrate it to that UNC path so the user loses nothing. So all the fun stuff that I had, like my desktop background and my Outlook signature and my Office settings and all that other stuff, that gets uploaded into that Profile Unity custom template. And then when I'm ready to go and deploy FlexDirect, all I need to do is take the client's laptop, desktop, cloud, or whatever system away, or if they already have a 10-zig device, simply ask the 10-zig manager to push out the Profile Unity and FlexApp agent. And when it does, You simply log in with your user ID, you log in with your password. The profile then comes down to the system, either persistent or non-persistent fashion, entirely up to you. And then the applications that you need to function do exactly the same thing. So this is what we mean about doing more with less. So as we talked about during the beginning of this presentation, when we're talking about moving to cloud or moving to virtualization, you have to have a thin client anyway. So we're saying, yeah, still go and get that thin client, but instead of it having it be the accessing device, we're having it function as the endpoint. What's also great is that if you notice, there's all these other modules in here, and we can leverage these modules to automate everything that we want about the system. So if I want to go and automate registry pushes or printers or shortcuts or anything else, everything here is meant to be done in 5 clicks or less. So I'm no longer beholden to scripts or Active Directory or any other third-party tools. This really is all-encompassing, where I can say all the things that I normally had to do manually, I can do automatically and combine that with all this stuff that we're getting with this FlexDirect method. And remember what I said earlier about filters, that piece during the last part of the presentation. All those can be leveraged here. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly how we handle a profile Unity migration. And we're going to turn it back over to the Tenzig team. Thank you so much for your time.